How are you?
Good evening.
Hi.
So maybe just to introduce ourselves, Roger Burkhardt. I've been a proud resident of Greenberg for 30 years. Worked on a number of community initiatives in East Irvington around conservation. I think I sat on the police board many years ago for a few years. In my professional
Could you
capacity...
move that microphone a little bit closer to you? Thank you.
Can you hear okay?
Just bring it as close as you can.
Bring it closer. Thank you for the check.
Thank you.
All right. So in my professional capacity, I work in technology. So our chief technology officer was at the NYSE for 6 years. I work quite a lot with large energy companies doing their software. But the reason I'm here tonight is as a resident, I can see the potential for addressing our climate change issues, and community solar seems to be a part of that. So with that, let me hand over to Leo.
Hi, good evening. Good to see you. My name is Leo Wiegman with Sustainable Westchester. It's good to see so many familiar faces. In fact, Sustainable Westchester is a nonprofit of which the town of Greenberg serves as the midwife role because it was born in this room in 2015 when we merged Northern and Southern Westchester Energy Action Consortiums. And this town of Greenberg has been an active member of of many of our programs, and in fact is a leading municipality in the area that I direct at Sustainable Westchester, which is the solar programs, which include solarized campaigns for residential and small businesses to put solar on their own roofs, and includes community solar programs where folks who can't have solar on their own roofs can subscribe to a solar project that may be on the roof of a large office complex or warehouse complex. With that in mind, you want to make any introduction? We're here to discuss the options going forward for Greenberg for solar, briefly.
Is this a PowerPoint that we can?
It can be, but
Everyone's
it's
got
the
it,
same
yeah.
thing as what's on your
Yeah, I just,
pages.
in case anyone was watching.
Yeah, for the
I'm going to
public.
go upstairs, grab my laptop, bring it down here, and I'll make that happen.
Good point. Okay. I did ask before we sat down. I wasn't aware of that benefit. So what we wanted to do, if you look at the agenda, is just talk a little bit about, why this is an important topic, what the benefits are for the town, how Sustainable Westchester can act as a technical advisor to the town. And we also want to kind of locate this in the goals that New York State has set for renewable energy, which in turn are aligned with the Paris goals. And then get to the specifics, which is to talk about how the board can support an accelerated adoption by helping to move towards the model of using some of the town sites which are available for solar. But we're happy to talk about anything else that you would find useful. Is this a reasonable agenda, or are there other things you'd like to cover?
Basically, what you're looking to do is have the solar parking lots, right?
Well, solar can be placed in a lot of different places,
Right.
and the town has a lot of different kinds of facilities. So we're trying to tailor that to the facilities the town has.
Yeah.
And we've been meeting, Garrett and myself, we've been meeting pretty much once a week for a couple of weeks already.
Yeah, and we've also met with Department of Public Works, some planning, Parks and Rec, as we got into the specific situations to try and start getting their input as to whether these look feasible or not.
Do you have one ideal location, one or two,
We're going to go through 3 or 4 examples that are very specific. We have time to go through that together. So in terms of just the summary of the benefits, this is very much gated by my own journey here. So as someone who believes would like to leave a planet or state that my kids and grandchildren will find reasonable, I've been very interested in getting off fossil fuels onto heat pump many years ago, and always stymied in my attempt to get to solar because I always get this choice: if you've got to cut down some great mature trees, which is often the case in Westchester, on your property to get solar. So if you don't have a roof that's a good fit, you find that you've got that unenviable choice. So I cut down 6 mature oak trees. It's a nasty place to be. And so I was told to look at community solar, had a look at what was out there, and found there's just long waiting lists. So I'm just an example of the kind of residents would like to see renewable energy, like to stop my kids breathing pollution, deal with climate change. And as I started to look into it and talking with Paul about this, we realized that there was a really big role that the town could have in 2 ways. One is in moving with expedition to find sites where community solar can meet climate change goals, generate a little bit of revenue for the town, and allow residents to reduce their bills, right? And then the other thing is really to act as a convening center to encourage private organizations who may also have sites, for example, lots and lots of parking lots that big property owners have. And I think the town, by both its own example and by making it relatively straightforward for private property owners to move things forward, can have a multiplier effect. So we're going to talk mostly about what's within the purview of the town, which is the kind of sites that might be interesting. But I think we do believe that it will encourage, on a multiplying effect, to have other private property owners move forward. So the good news here is we don't have to invent any new technology. Technology is proven. It's got very much cheaper over time. The panels themselves are actually a small part of the cost these days. The capital is not an issue. The federal government, with the Inflation Reduction Act, has found the best part of $500 billion. New York State has incentives. So we have technology, we have capital, and it really comes down to, moving forward at speed with identifying sites. The one thing we don't have a ton of, at the risk of sounding like I'm climbing on a soapbox, is time, in that as we get into the goals, you see that we're really trying, in order to meet our goals as a state, as a community, we really have to ramp up the pace at which we go through these processes. And in my experience, someone who's been committed to environmental causes for my working life, in general, delay has been good for the environment. It slows down things that you're not sure are a good idea, right? So I think our instinct is often, let's take our time, let's not move too fast. And in this case, it's a little counterintuitive that we kind of need to move at a little bit more of a fast pace to meet the goals for 2030. So any questions on the kind of summary, why we're doing it? Does it make sense? Is it news to anyone, or rehearsing things you've heard 17 times before?
Well, makes perfect sense.
Okay. So let me just,
Especially with the shutdown of Indian Point, which is a good thing, but the source of power of electrification is now strained, so solar power can certainly supplement.
Yeah.
It should be very
And
important.
every megawatt of solar power that we install reduces the times in which the Con Ed has to spin up a fossil fuel plant and pollute the air, right? So there's an immediate benefit as well as the longer-term climate benefit. So over to solar, to community, to Sustainable Westchester.
Sure, as you know, Sustainable Westchester,
Just promote me and I'll do the share screen.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
as you know, Sustainable Westchester runs quite a lot of different kinds of programs. The largest program we run is our Westchester Power Community Choice Aggregation Program that Greenberg participates in, and many of the villages in the town participate in, and now has 145,000 customers participating in it, and the largest city that joined us most recently is the city of Yonkers as well. So that's our largest single program. Solar and community energy as part of solar is our second largest program. And I'll leave you these flyers later tonight about a grid efficiency program that's recently available to you as well. New York State leads the nation with its most recent climate law and the Climate Act, and the environmental bond of over $4 billion passed by 63% of the vote in November. So clearly there's strong bipartisan support among residents of New York for funding the climate adaptation infrastructure that we need. In order to meet our goals of 70% renewable by 2030, New York needs to install 10,000 megawatts of solar by 2030, and Greenberg's share of that is 50 megawatts. The good news is you've done quite a bit, as we can see on the next, you've done quite a bit, but we need to make what you've done increase by 300 to 400% by 2030 to keep up with the goals that the state has. And a lot of the work that's being done now in New York is for community solar projects where you establish a larger solar system that can serve tens or dozens or multiples of hundreds of houses, depending on the size of the system, that's located on some other facility. It's located on a parking canopy in downtown White Plains. It's located on the roof of office buildings over here in Hawthorne or Elmsford, or it's located on a piece of ground that was a brown field that's now being converted. And so this community solar concept is whereby individual residents can subscribe to their portion of that community solar farm that's located elsewhere and receive a credit on their bill for participating, and the state mandates that that credit is at least a 5% discount savings over what you would have paid the utility for that kilowatt hour. And the reason that there's that savings is possible is it's cheaper for the utility to take the energy from the solar farm on the roof of the big warehouse than it is to turn on the peaker plants to get those extra kilowatt hours into the grid. And so that community solar model has been working very well. We've worked with 10 or 12 different solar developers on 24 different solar farms and enrolled thousands of Westchester residents in community solar projects. Westchester has a lot of solar in it, but Greenburgh is the town that has more solar than any other municipality in it, I have to say, except for City of Yonkers, but City of Yonkers is bigger. And you have quite a few different kinds of solar systems. You have a lot of residential solar systems. You have over 1,400 on the books or coming. And that's this page right here. With the, you have quite a few non-residential solar systems, which are essentially on commercial buildings typically. And you have a solar system on this roof that dates back to 2016. It was one of the early non-residential solar systems installed in
I think you were
the town
the
of
first
Greenburgh.
one.
I think you were. And then you have, in addition, a growing number of community solar systems. You have 18 that are online now, and you have 15 that are in the pipeline that will be constructed in the next year and a half. And so the capacity of those community solar systems has been growing. It was about 300 kilowatts on average, but the pipeline in the future is twice that size, 600. People are finding larger roofs and larger opportunities. So the bottom line is solar already has a great deal of momentum in the town of Greenburgh, and you can continue to capitalize on that momentum going forward. And so that's what we're really here to help with. And we had identified in discussions, the next slide is simply a graph of where we need to go from where we are now to meet the state goals by 2030. And it's almost a 400% increase in the capacity that you have now.
Do you know if the state it has grant program? Are they giving grants to meet their goals?
So the state has an incentive program that is a direct grant to lower the cost of installing solar. That's the same program they've had for a while. They're now going through a review of it to help reduce the cost of acquiring the solar system. The federal government has added in the Inflation Reduction Act an investment tax credit of 30% for every dollar invested. You can shelter from taxable income. It was going to go down to 22 cents, and now it's staying at 30 cents, which is what it was 5 years ago. They've done two things with that investment tax credit. They've expanded it to be available to non-profit or non-tax-paying entities like municipalities, school districts, and local non-profits by either having those local non-tax-paying entities being able to file for direct cash payment that would be the equivalent of the 30% cents on the dollar, or by being able to transfer that benefit to a tax entity that does have the tax appetite for it. The instructions for how that's supposed to work are still being worked out at the IRS, and all of us in the business are kind of waiting for those instructions to be clarified. But we think that that's a sort of a game changer for nonprofits, local governments, and school districts that had the opportunity, because of their facilities, to have large solar systems on their roofs of large school district buildings or parking lots, municipal parking lots, like the Croton Harmon Station parking lot where I live. But in any case, so the incentives have never been better at both the state and the federal level. That's the short answer. And we took a look at some sites. This is just a short list of some of the sites that are operated and owned by the town of Greenburgh. And the approximate amount of potential for total solar on those sites is listed here. The two sites, Anthony Veteran Park would be solar canopies, and the East Irvington transfer site would be ground mounted. Those are ideal sites because of their size for community solar projects. The town hall solar parking canopies would be 4 smaller parking canopies here to shelter parts of the parking lot here at Town Hall. And so
I have that graphic on the screen now.
yeah, and so these are sites that where we looked to try to propose potential solar sites so that the staff members and your department heads here could think about them. And we walked these sites and looked at them and examined them, discussed them with the town the department heads, certainly with Garrett from planning, with Richard.
Just a quick note on this site. Sorry, go ahead.
I remember, a few years ago when somebody wanted to put up the solar canopies at the Anthony Veteran Park, they indicated that they would be giving the town revenue from it. So let's say if we're looking at the town hall parking, canopy, right now, would this be a revenue generator or would this be a cost to the town?
So a small revenue generator is probably the net of it.
Well, that's,
Yeah, it's a small revenue generator for the town, either because there's a small lease payment or because the town decides that it wants to lock in and purchase the solar electricity at below what it would be paying otherwise.
So when we're looking at, locations, because I know, Jerry Byrne said he has to do a master plan for, the Parks Department, so that's a little bit ways out. But if we took, say, the town hall and did like a one demonstration, because then we could show it to some of the commercial landlords also, wouldn't that be sort of like the way to go? Because there's really,
Yeah, I think that's an ideal role for the municipality to play, particularly if it's a situation where you may not have a capital expenditure to do that, where the third-party solar investor would spend the money to do it. You could spend the money yourself and control the whole project. If you wanted it to be a community solar project, you have the other option. So you have more flexible financing options than you ever had before. You either have a third-party developer who would develop it, would pay the lease payment, resulting lease payment to the town, and then subscribe local residents and businesses to the solar system, or subscribe the town itself.
Just a quick note on the town hall parking lot, which is on the screen now. We did walk that recently with various town staff, including DPW Commissioner, myself, and Aaron from our office. Definitely had his forestry hat on. And these 4 locations would result in minimal tree removals. And actually, the trees that are there are rather small. Aaron felt that a majority of them likely could be transferred elsewhere onto the town hall property. So really, if that's the case, what we envision here is essentially putting these solar arrays in locations that are dominated by pavement. So that seemed to be a positive. There was a note about the Taxter site. I will say, and I think we didn't flesh that out fully in your discussion here, but Commissioner Fahn did indicate that that space he was not in favor of at present. That it's used for town operations, and that is something that, at least in the immediate, we did not want to look at. We did meet with Commissioner Byrne very recently, and he did express concerns over the fact that indeed there's a master plan underway for the site. He also expressed aesthetic concerns that it is a park. However, Commissioner Byrne did indicate that he would be open to doing sort of a pilot on, I believe, the western portion and a portion of that parking lot.
Yeah.
That would be worked into the master plan.
so
So,
that's a little bit,
well, everything we're talking about is not imminent. These are not going to be erected in 1 month or anything like that.
No,
It is a process. So, I mean, I think we're probably looking at
So I
a
think
process that builds into next year.
I mean, this goes to the point about time is not on our side, right? So one of the benefits of working with and I'm not part of Sustainable Westchester, but working with an organization like this is to help expedite the process of getting bids. So I think what the meeting with the department's heads showed is that they have thought through, particularly for Anthony Veterans Park, they already want to do solar. It's part of what they want to do. And what would be helpful to them is a structured process to go out to developers and say, okay, tell us what it would look like if, to your point, we did the west side and then later did the east side, or should we do both together? And perhaps the multi-purpose building roof was another thing that Jerry brought up. So we're not at the point now where we're saying if we know what the answer is, but it's more a matter of what would be the next approach. And the easiest path for the town is not to commit large sums of capital, but instead to use the membership of Sustainable Westchester the town has to go through an RFP process for a number of sites, see what comes back, right? And then make a decision about which of the sites to do. There'll probably be a lot of different options on that.
I had a question, because, to me, there's so many commercial businesses, you look 119, you look Central Avenue, so when we're looking at, meeting the goal of making the planet more sustainable and making Greenberg sort of a model for other communities, if we could create like a pilot, even if it's a small pilot somewhere, then we could reach out to the commercial, landlords and say, look at the town hall. It's sort of like when we started the solar on the roof here.
Yeah.
It was a very small solar roof project, and then after it really picked up fast. So I'm sort of wondering, in my mind, if we said, okay, let's take the town hall, which is under the control of, say, the town, And we picked that site, we made it a demonstration, and then at the same time, say, during the summer months, if we have, we could be reaching out to commercial landlords, and say, take a look at this, see if we could do it on their properties, then I think we could make this really, really go fast. Manhattanville, it's, very, very impressive. I don't know if anybody saw the solar panels there. The canopy is there. They've had it for probably 5-6 years.
Yeah, there are a number of, we can certainly create a little picture gallery, if you will, of solar canopies that have been developed recently throughout the county, and it's
I think the good news is that, the town has shown with a pilot, 2016, 7 years ago, that solar can work, right? And now the question is, how to get to scale by maximizing both what the town can do and what, to your point, Paul, the private sector can do.
So I have two
Have you-
questions.
Oh,
Sorry, Ellen, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Have you had any indication from the state as to monies attributable from the Environmental Bond Act? I know the rollout isn't going to be until this summer, but I was wondering if you've gotten, because
So
that could be a funding source, or...
We're tracking that. We're not sure how much direct funding the state would make available, let's say, to local governments to do this, other than what they're doing through the New York State Energy Research Development Authority, New York Sun program, where they're carving out and they're sort of recasting the amount of money that they're putting into that. So most of the solar development will take place using that existing megawatt block framework that they've already spent 10, 12 years working on. And there are a number, and Greenberg has been able to take advantage of a number of clean energy community grants through programs that we've developed and worked on with you for money that flowed back to you. But I'm not aware of any other pots of money, but we're certainly going to keep track of how that gets legislated and budgeted in the governor's proposal and otherwise.
We could also look at.
So wait a minute, so if we take municipal property and set up community solar arrays thereon, is there any way, or are we guaranteeing residents first come, first serve in terms of getting on these community solar lists?
So yes, if you are the owner of the solar project, you can certainly determine who will be first in line to subscribe. Or even if you're the host of a site. For example, we are currently, just this week,
So you could, for example, put it in the RFP, right, which would be that part, right? So
Yes,
you would
yes.
say to the people providing it, we want Greenberg residents to have first call. Is that what you're?
Yes.
Yeah,
So that's how you do it.
I'll give you an example. Just this week, there's construction starting on the roof of the Village Town of Austining Operations Center, which is what they call their Public Works Garage. It's a big
The what kind of garage?
It's their Public Works Garage.
Public Work, yes.
They call it their Operations
Yes,
Center.
yes.
Nonetheless, yeah. So every town gets called whatever they want.
Of course, yeah.
And so that's a standing seam metal roof, low pitch. It needed some roof repair. The roof repair has been just finished. And through the RFP process, they secured a bid from a solar developer to repair the roof, put solar on the roof, and then have that subscribed to by local residents. And our organization is now responsible for putting people in the 10562 Austining zip code into the enrollment queue for that solar facility.
Okay.
Beyond that, we have in mind, once other things happen and the state makes some other policy decisions, to target low to moderate income households throughout Westchester County and make them the first enrolled in these solar credit, discounts. So that's, we're waiting for some state policy to come our way to be able to do that on a larger scale.
There's another question too, I know.
Yeah.
Was
You
there
know, I have
other
a-
questions?
No, I figured it out.
That's-
So we can, so your RFP, or when we work with you on RFP process, we can definitely carve out a local preference.
Okay.
So-
Also, their opinion is that town hall roof is underutilized significantly.
Sure.
So when we talk about the carports, also a potential is the roof, so I just wanted to mention that. Sorry.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
two,
And, we're just finishing the construction on the senior housing. Is there opportunity there? Certainly helping the residents.
So
Yeah.
that's
I
a
hadn't-
Greenberg Housing Authority owned site, and
Okay.
yes, new construction, so
I hadn't looked at that, although I have to say that, good news, We just got word this last week that we, after a year and a half of making the application, we were awarded a significant grant to specifically provide technical assistance on solar and energy storage for Westchester's municipal housing authorities. So we're going to be visiting each housing authority to talk to them about the facilities that, some of them own significant facilities or are making new ones. And so we're going to be working, we have specific funding now to devote resources to helping those housing authorities go through a similar RFP process for what fits their site. Some of them are high-rise, some of them are mid-rise, some of them are scattered site, so there's all different kinds of configurations.
That
And
could
Greenberg's
be
housing
really-
authority is on our list.
Yeah,
so.
good.
There's one category we haven't talked about. We've talked about roofs, we've talked about parking canopies, well, there seems to be a lot of opportunity. And then the other category is actually things floating. So if you have a reservoir or a pond, often that can be a good site. That's not leapt out. The reason it's not in the pack is we didn't find any as yet, but you guys may have some other ideas we haven't thought about yet, so that's another category.
Particularly for non-recreational water bodies. So obviously, you're not going to do it in a swimming lake, but if you have a reservoir that just, is there for detaining water for your reservoir purposes, that's more frequently, you're not monetizing that water space above the reservoir column for anything else. If you float solar on it and do it in the proper way, you can lower the water column pressure, temperature, lower evaporation from the reservoir, and generate electricity.
Let me ask a question. So, I'm thinking, let's say Crane's Pond, which is in Edgemont. If there would be, that's a pond, but would that impact the aesthetics of a pond? If you, if you create solar?
Well, it would have solar floating on it. I'd be happy to follow up. I didn't, we hadn't looked at that for.
No, because I'm just thinking when you were
What's
just
the
mentioning
acreage
pond.
of a water body that you feel is critical mass?
I think if, depending, so if the water body is 5 or 6 acres, then you could float the solar
Okay.
with enough distance, with enough buffer around it.
Okay.
You want.
I just wanted order of magnitude, we don't have that yet.
We don't have
Yeah,
that.
I'm just checking.
It's only half acre. I guess.
I
I'm
mean, I
sure
didn't
that
want-
there's some
I didn't-
people listening
I
to
didn't
this
wanna
right now
get-
that are relieved.
Riley Pond.
I don't want to distract from what's actionable.
Well, like Riley Pond.
Yeah,
What's actionable really is parking lots and roofs right now.
sure.
Yeah.
We got
And,
plenty of those.
You got plenty of those,
Yeah.
so.
So the next step would be to do an RFP? So with the board, what would be the pleasure of the board, in terms of the next steps? What, would you want to authorize Garrett to work on a proposed RFP and then present it to the board?
If I could suggest, so so Sustainable Westchester, the town is already a dues-paying member of Sustainable Westchester.
Sure.
And we're happy to be sort of an advisor or even sort of manage an RFP drafting process to help each municipality that wants to participate. We have other municipalities looking at the same thing, so it may be that we come up with an RFP that has Greenberg sites in it, and that the next town also wants to piggyback on as we go, so.
Is there any benefit to more than one community putting out
I
a
think
single
you-
RFP?
I think you have enough sites that we could make we could get an RFP out to get responses to you,
Okay.
for sure.
Just for
But
Greenberg, yeah.
just for Greenberg
Okay.
specifically.
Okay.
And I would, you can be as,
Be the anchor tenant.
well,
Okay.
yeah, but there are other municipalities that we're also in parallel discussion with that may have sites that they want to offer, so we might, obviously, if Greenberg did an RFP on its own, another municipality could piggyback off of it under general municipal law, but
Well,
So I'm just
it's
wondering if
something
there's
that
state efficiencies
it would-
for you.
Yep.
Is there a benefit?
An
to-
economy of scale.
Economies of scale
Yeah.
to multiple municipalities putting out the same RFP?
I think, so yes, the economy of scale is if the RFP has enough good sites in it, then you'll attract better, better responses.
Well, maybe this is
More
something that the
competitive.
Village Officials Association, in all the river villages.
So I had not yet gone to all the 6 villages. I know that they meet regularly.
I think, these kind of things need a first mover.
Yeah.
So if it's in your pleasure to say, we'd like to go ahead and invite others to join, that could be a catalyst for others to join.
And, I've spoken to the sustainable, there's a new sustainability coordinator from Irvington.
Irvington, yeah.
And I spoke to her about this, and she was interested. And then was a very interesting group of people in Dobbs Ferry. They had a major event at the Dobbs Ferry Library a couple of weeks ago. So I spoke to
Well,
some
that
people
was in
there.
conjunction with
Yeah,
sustainable.
and people are
Yeah.
really interested. But that's why I sort of feel like the town hall, to me, the parking lot here, and, the roof here, to me, is sort of like an ideal pilot. It's not like a really major, it's not major, but it's just sort of it shows people what could be done. And I feel from there, we might be able to generate momentum for the commercial and for other villages.
So I didn't mean to jump in, I just wanted to be, if the town wanted to do an RFP, it wouldn't all be on Garrett's shoulders alone and I would run away. That wouldn't be the case at all. Just want you to
That's
know.
good. Garrett is very happy to hear that.
Yeah. We have,
It's being recorded.
but we have various, and the RFP itself does not have to be a terribly long thing. It just needs to explain what the town's wishes are and the nature of the town's sites, the sites and the conditions of the sites. The more explicit we are there, the less risk there is in someone responding it to say, oh, this isn't just a flyer, I'm going to actually be able to work through this and give you some real concrete information. If the town wanted to be an off-taker, the town could actually explain or make available to respondents to the RFP, the town's electric accounts and which one of those would match up to be offset by something that would be happening. If it wanted that as an alternative to doing a community solar only. So you have more options. I have more options for you than you could possibly make plays on. So let's just
Okay.
figure that out and let you guys sort out what you want to do.
Yeah, but I think it's having the scale that you have, right, with the sites we've already identified, and maybe some more will come along, gives the opportunity to respond to the challenges we have, I think, in terms of the numbers, right? And the fact that you led with a pilot all those years ago, makes it a nice way to sort of launch.
This is great.
Well, yeah, I think we're interested, for
Yeah.
sure.
Did you have a question, Councilman?
Yeah, so this is terrific for community solar, for people that don't have a roof.
Yeah.
But I actually was disappointed I had called Sustainable Westchester because I have a roof. Many people have roofs, and I thought that Sustainable Westchester would take some role at least in providing guidance to homeowners other than people knocking on a door. And, 2, 3, 4, I think there are 5 companies, and each homeowner individually trying to figure out, okay, is this legit or not? I couldn't even get Sustainable Westchester to say, could you give me the name of 3 reputable companies?
So was
I
that,
actually signed with a company, which is a high-end company. I still don't have it on my roof because apparently the plans that the salespeople have, the computer program the salespeople have for what could fit on my roof, doesn't match what the engineers have, right? And then the person who comes to your door apparently controls as to whether or not you ever get solar because he doesn't want to deal with that company anymore, so because of delays, who knows what. And so, even though I'd like to have solar, I'm sure I'm not alone. I mean,
I have a
it's,
similar experience that I found it harder than I would like to navigate. Back when I thought I could find a roof that worked,
right.
I discovered, having talked to many of them over the last 10 years, that I couldn't. But I do think that's an area where, for those people who do have good sites on their property,
Right.
the more that we can do to provide access to resources. So, for example, if the town has worked with 4 installers who did a good job, I, as a resident, would love to know, hey,
who are they?
who are they, right? I mean, that would be helpful, because at least we
Right.
know they're not totally fly-by-night.
Exactly.
That would be helpful.
so I'm sorry you've had that experience. I do have some good news for you. Before I came back to Sustainable Westchester as Director of Solar Programs, I had my own solar company for 10 years. And so that's probably why I was brought back here to run solar programs. So I have done about 150 different assessments of properties for people who've just wandered in the Sustainable Westchester door in the last year to ask whether those were homeowners, sometimes or small business owners. And I'm happy to give you a sort of a first opinion or second opinion on what's reasonable for your property, and then make a couple of suggestions. I typically, as a nonprofit whose members are the municipalities, I can't pick one winner and just give that winner's name out
No,
only.
we don't want you
But
to.
I typically will give out the names of 2 or 3 companies that I know do good work
Right.
and that I know are locally owned and operated.
And I've also,
So that you'll get somebody who
Right.
lives in the neighborhood or you're going to see around, and not somebody who's just flying in for the day and dropping flyers and
Yes.
going. So
I also did a questionnaire to people with solar, and, about a year or two years ago, I did it like 2 or 3 consecutive years. So I have, basically responses, and if you want, I could ask Krista to send it to you. I mean,
That'd be a great resource.
they have the names of the companies and the names of, residents. and, maybe.
An evaluation of
and
the
an
job that
evaluation.
was done.
But what would also be interesting, because I saw somebody a few days ago, and she said she put in solar, and the company went out of business, and, she was complaining, she was one of the first ones, and she said, it's been a very bad experience. I saw her at Chico, she said it was a bad experience because she put it in, and now she took it down because she said she wasn't happy with the process. So I think that maybe what I should do is ask, the building department to get me a list of, everybody who's installed solar, when they installed it, because there could be old solar panels that, are not functioning as well as, say, the new ones, and would be interesting to, hear from everybody who's had it.
Sure.
The good news is that the solar industry itself is now maturing enough that there now are solar repair people.
Yeah.
So for people who are stuck in that case, there's actually 2 companies that have opened their doors in the last 6 months to specialize in that. And I'm happy to to refer people to those folks.
So
That's
it'd be
great.
helpful
That's
if-
what we need are resources.
I'll get that to you, and I'll.
Well, it's just not to me, I'd like it to, I would like it,
No, but
to reach this,
It's helpful for anyone in your
situation. To reach this goal for
yeah.
for the residential,
Yeah.
you're going to need people that have to do more than, do, and, and everybody knows, I'm a very detailed person, and I really picked, and it was actually the most expensive system that was out there, and been in business for 35 years, but now what I'm faced with is the person who comes to your door basically locks up. They don't want to deal with that company anymore. I can't get that company. I mean, I can't imagine, I could explain to you offline, but I just can't imagine the typical person
Yeah.
who is dealing with this, who really wants solar,
Right.
right? I was committed to having solar in
Yeah.
my house by the end of last year. I still don't have solar on my
So,
house, right?
yeah,
So-
we did, City of Westchester did run a series of solarized campaigns, community by community, where we helped and provided guidance. And we had some external funding from the state to do that. It turned out to be very, very labor intensive. And we did have a tremendous success. We had 600 or 700 solar systems installed through that process by helping individuals, match up with a reputable local company. We've actually have a proposal in to restart that program, but I don't have a funding decision yet. And if we are able to restart it, then we'll be able to come back in and run a solarized Westchester and be able to have the resources to answer those questions from individuals.
You did a good job. because
That's great.
For a lot of people
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I think that Hastings and Dobbs Ferry, for instance, had
It's
availed themselves of
and the
that a
solar
number of
developers
years
have-
ago.
Greenberg as well, 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's great. So you'll follow up and
Yeah.
we'll keep the ball moving.
Yep, thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Pleasure.
And of course, the devil is in the details, so when we see the
Sure.
documents, right?
Yeah,
But-
yeah.
But it
Yeah.
sounds good initially.
I have some flyers for grid efficiency. If you're not part of the GridWise program, grid rewards, you can.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
And
Thank
we-
you very much.
And we could put
Yeah.
we could put charging stations underneath.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You would like that?